Hey, welcome back everybody. Happy Saturday. Great to see you. Hope we're having a wonderful start to the weekend and hopefully we had a very productive week. Now we've got a very active pattern that's been ongoing for a while and will continue so going into this weekend and into next week when we have a big time lake effect snow machine cranking up, a snow and ice storm out west, as well as a dangerous air mass of Arctic air really taking over much of the country, and that air mass likely to lead to a big time snow and ice storm for areas very far south in the country, and we'll definitely touch on that in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so, especially in this very active pattern. It's great to stay updated, so you can also hit that bell for the latest notifications after you subscribe. In fact, we hit 7,000 yesterday, so that was super awesome, and I'm super grateful to everyone that has already subscribed. Again, it really means a lot, and it really helps the channel grow and reach more people. Now also, if you do like the video, hit that like button, comment, let me know where you're watching from, and consider sharing the video with somebody that you think might find it useful, as again, we get down this very active stretch of weather here within the next couple of days, and honestly, really within the next week or so. I think with all that said, that's all of the announcements I have, so let's go ahead and jump right into your forecast. Now, taking a look out there, there's kind of a couple different areas we need to watch out for, and I'm actually going to switch this over to our infrared satellite. Kind of does a better job, I think, at showing us what we're looking at. So this right here, there's that big storm system that we were dealing with yesterday, and we're not done with it yet. We are still seeing some direct impacts from it up through Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and even portions of Massachusetts, but you'll notice the front here now draping well down south across much of the country, and that very nice, cooler, drier air has settled in for most folks throughout the Ohio River Valley and through really just much of the East Coast in general. Now, again, that's not the end of the storm, though. As this kind of pulls away and moves up into Canada, we're going to get very strong winds on the back side here. That's going to lead to some big-time lake effect snow through New York State, Pennsylvania, Ohio, as well as Michigan and Wisconsin. Likely to see big-time impacts out of that. Now, the other story is out west here. You'll notice, look at this stream of moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest. That's going to bring big-time ice and snow totals really over the next 24 to 48 hours, and we'll touch on that as well. Now, outside of all of that, I want you to notice something. Notice how these kind of colors are not moving on the map up here into Montana and Wyoming. You might be wondering, well, why are those clouds just sitting there? That's actually not clouds. That is how cold the air is. It is so cold up into those parts of the country right now due to this kind of piece of the polar vortex that is broken off that's showing up as very cold cloud tops. So that just gives you an idea of kind of how dangerous this air mass is if you're not, well protected and have all of your extremities kind of covered here. It's really showing up as just very tall clouds. So again, that's kind of interesting science there and kind of mind-blowing to look at on satellite imagery. Now, taking a look at watches, warnings, advisories, and kind of everything else, as well as radar imagery, well, we've got a couple, again, areas to watch. Again, here's that just mess of radar imagery up through the northeast and through much of the Midwest. Again, that's that big storm system we just talked about, continuing to slowly work on out of here. And then the other big area on radar is back towards the west. That's the second storm system that we're going to talk about with that snow and ice potential. Now what I'm going to do really quickly is remove radar from this map so we can just take a look at our active alerts and kind of dive into this a little bit more. So we'll start in the east here and then we'll work westbound. Now if you're watching up in Maine, Vermont, again we are still seeing a couple of snow showers moving on through. Same story for New Hampshire today, but just winter weather advisories left over for that. Now, as we kind of work down south here, you'll notice we still do have a lot of wind advisories and high wind warnings here for much of the Appalachia chain from North Carolina northbound up through Pennsylvania, as well as some high wind warnings. Now, zooming this in even more to kind of this part of the country, up here through New York State, we have winter storm warnings. That for big-time snow from the lake effect likely to crank up, and same story for the Midwest here. Through Michigan, Wisconsin, again, a lot of lake effect snow over the next couple of days. Now, getting kind of further south here, you'll notice down here through, Tennessee and northern Mississippi, sections of Arkansas and northern Alabama. These, sure enough, are winter storm watches in effect. As again, that southern storm that we're going to have to track here, likely, to kind of get going here sooner rather than later, and we're already within the range to issue some of those winter weather watches. So again, confidence growing on that. Now, in the central part of the country, just as active, all of these kind of gray and blue colors you're seeing, those are wind chill advisories, wind chill warnings, and kind of any kind of warning that they can give that says, hey, it's going to be cold, get ready. And again, those extend all the way down to the Ohio River Valley and then back all the way up into Montana and down into North Dakota. So again, a big section of the country into dangerously cold weather. Now back out west, again, we have winter storm warnings and even some ice storm warnings out here through Utah, Nevada, Oregon, Idaho, and California, as well as even some flood watches for some of those coastal regions. Again, a big-time storm out there bringing big-time impacts and bringing a lot of winter weather, all, again, thanks to this big area of Arctic air that's just kind of parked itself right over the middle of the country and will continue to slowly work south and east here over the next couple of days. So again, we've got a little bit of everything out there. We've got the active radar imagery, we've got very active alert map, and again, all of that just due to this very never-ending pattern of weather that's been ongoing through much of January. And this is any sign to what 2024 is going to be like. I'll tell you, we're going to have a very long year in store for us. The good news is, though, I do think we're going to get a little bit of a lull in the pattern here about 7 to 10 days from now. So that's kind of a little bit of good news there. But before we get there, let's talk about everything else. So we'll start in the Northeast here, again, an area that's still dealing with impacts from this ongoing winter storm, and we are still seeing some rain here into southern Maine and into southern New England. Luckily, though, throughout today, that will become more and more scattered, but still, pretty heavy snow falling through much of northern Maine here throughout much of today. Now, it's what happens on the backside here, though, that is going to be the bigger story for the Northeast throughout today and going into tomorrow. Look at these bands of lake effect snow here through much of Michigan, back through sections of New York State, Pennsylvania, and northern Ohio. Again, that snow going to really crank up off the Great Lakes throughout today. And going into the overnight tonight, very heavy snow squalls continuing for the Buffalo area, south into Erie, Pennsylvania, even into upstate New York, seeing big-time lake effect snow. And I'm just going to kind of move this ahead continuously. This is going into overnight tonight, about midnight, still snowing in some of these areas. And by the time we're waking up tomorrow, it's still snowing. Now, this is whenever kind of a second piece of energy works on through. I want you to notice we've got a little bit of a short wave here, just meaning a kink in the isobars, indicating a trough. And that is going to allow for a second storm system outside of this lake effect snow to kind of work on through the Northeast going into tomorrow afternoon for our Sunday. You'll notice that kind of blossoms a little bit here, still dealing with lake effect snow, but also kind of this quick hitting band of snow, likely to move through, I think, the Harrisburg area tomorrow morning, eventually eastbound, maybe through DC. Baltimore could see some snowflakes out of this, not out of the question. And by the time we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, we've got a nice little, band of heavy snow through southern New York State, kind of through the Catskills there, and moved through the Finger Lakes earlier in the morning. And eventually here, going later into tomorrow afternoon, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, getting in on this little piece of energy, bringing a quick burst of snow. And that continues through the evening hours, working eastbound, eventually through Maine, as it kind of really tightens up and we could see even more snow there, especially in the southern sections of Maine. So you folks that are seeing rain right now could get some snow to make up for it Sunday evening here. And eventually that kind of clears out going into our Monday. But what doesn't clear out is that lake effect snow continuing here throughout the day Sunday, you'll notice. And then eventually, hopefully kind of tapering down, I think, a little bit going into our Monday morning. And that's when another storm gets going to the south. And again, we'll talk about that here later on in the video. So how much snow for the Northeast when all is said and done over the next 48 hours? Well, again, the big winners are going to be upstate New York here and kind of down into the Buffalo area where we could see more than a foot or two of snow here. Again, a lot of that snow going to pile up quickly from that lake effect machine. And again, Buffalo area could see 2 feet of snow. Now, locals here, you'll be very well aware of this. That does not mean everyone is going to see 2 feet. The northern side of town could see, maybe a couple inches, while the southern side of town could see, 2 or 3 feet of snow. So that's just kind of the tough part about these lake effect bands. They're just really tough to pinpoint ahead of time. Kind of just going to have to nowcast this one. But either way, be prepared for big time snow totals in this part of the country. Now, from that kind of second piece of energy that moves on through, could get a quick burst of a couple inches of snow through much of Pennsylvania tomorrow. I think same story here through southern New York State up into western Massachusetts. I think an inch or two of snow not out of the question. National Weather Service here going with a little bit less, but again, that could pile up quite quickly. And as for Maine, this is what's left to come today, as well as with whatever secondary snow we get tomorrow afternoon. All right, that's the Northeast. The kind of Midwest area here, Wisconsin and Michigan, also going to get on some big time lake effect snow. This is this afternoon. You'll notice that snow continuing to fall. And again, piling up quickly here, especially into western Michigan, the UP of Michigan, and even some of those snow squalls getting kind of further south than there throughout this afternoon. And that continues overnight tonight. Now this right here, this is that piece of energy that I talked about in the Northeast. It kind of gets going here into Indiana and Illinois overnight tonight, so could see some light snow out there. And even potentially into Kentucky, could see some light snow out of that storm system overnight tonight before it quickly moves on through. And by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, again, still dealing with this ongoing lake effect snow. UP of Michigan, the western shores there of Michigan, it's snowing good. Of course, isolated spots seeing a little bit more than others. But that continues here before finally kind of dying down a little bit. I think going overnight Sunday and into Monday, nicer conditions should kind of overtake much of the area. So how much snow in this part of the country? Well, again, it's going to be notable. I think much of the western shores of Michigan, about 8 to 12 inches of snow going to be quite likely. Isolated spots, though, could see more than that. I would not be surprised to see more than a foot of snow for a couple places here. Same story for the UP of Michigan. Isolated spots, more than more than a foot of snow, but widespread 8 to 12 inches there for many folks. And I will also mention kind of back here through Wisconsin and into northern Illinois, Indiana. Again, could see a little bit of snow as well over the next 48 hours or so. That could pile up to about an inch or so. Same story down here where that kind of secondary piece of energy moves on through. I think this is a little underdone. These forecasts here showing about half an inch. I think an inch might be a little more likely for you folks in that area. So again, just kind of watching that. Luckily, not a blockbuster storm outside of the lake effect snow, but enough that it is definitely worth mentioning here. All right, our folks up in eastern Canada, again, this storm really just now kind of getting underway for a lot of you folks. This is this afternoon, snowing good here through much of Quebec. Again, that heavy snow kind of piling up there through much of the day today, and that will continue overnight tonight. Oops, sorry, my map kind of got away from me there a little bit. But that continues throughout this afternoon into this evening, pictured here. Again, still snowing good. Rain for you folks down in Nova Scotia, just too much kind of warm air kind of surging northward here. But folks into Quebec proper and into Ontario, again, a very heavy dosing of snow throughout today, into this evening, even back end, snow showers throughout the day on Sunday here. And then that kind of storm system begins to work into New Brunswick and Labrador. They're going into our Sunday afternoon. You'll notice picking up there before finally, I think going later on into Sunday and into overnight Sunday, we've just kind of got scattered snow showers for much of eastern Canada here as the storm system really occludes and pulls northward kind of towards the Hudson Bay. So how much snow is left to come in this part of Canada? Well, again, 10 to 20 centimeters likely, I think, for a lot of those further inland areas here. Again, for much of kind of Quebec here, and even back into sections of northern Ontario, and same story kind of here through much of the coastlines. Now, as for sections of New Brunswick and Newfoundland, kind of, again, I think surrounding areas along the coastline here, 10 to 20 centimeters of snow, going to be quite likely for a lot of folks. Also, if you're Canadian and I mess up a province name or something, I do apologize. Feel free to correct me in the comments. Again, I'm from the United States, and specifically not even very close to the Canadian border in the United States. So I need to really brush up on my Canadian geography here, and I'll try to get better. But I think this one's Ontario. This one should be Quebec, Nova Scotia, and then Newfoundland and Labrador, I think. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But again, all that still kind of takes me a while to think about. So feel free to correct me if I get any of those wrong. Alrighty, that is kind of what's ongoing with the current storm system and what's left with that out in the east. Now let's talk about the west. Just as impactful of a storm out here, including really a big-time ice storm ongoing. I know a lot of the meteorologists out here in Oregon are putting in their work and getting their money's worth out of this storm, and rightfully so, because this is a big one, and we're going to see a lot of snow today, a lot of ice today, and in fact, by the time you're watching this, you probably already have a good amount of ice accumulation in sections of Oregon, or rainfall accumulation or snowfall accumulation, depending on where you're watching from. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into it a little bit. Now this is kind of what we're seeing right now out there. Here's that storm system continuing to gain strength off the Pacific Northwest coastline and just really funneling in an atmospheric river of precipitable water, bringing a lot of rain to the coastline, ice up here into northwestern Oregon, and then snow into the higher terrains here and into much of eastern Oregon, Nevada, and into the higher terrains of California. Now that's going to continue throughout much of today. You'll notice that ice continuing to fall, that snow continuing to fall, and that rain continuing to pile up here. Again, this is this afternoon, continuing into about the time the sun is going down here. This is when things should calm down a little bit, at least for the coastline. Now you'll notice this is when the storm itself is kind of moving ashore, and with that the kind of pool of precipitable water kind of pushing off towards the east with it. So tonight, again, about the time the sun is going down, that snow now spreading into Utah, Nevada, southern Idaho, and still snowing through much of northern Oregon and eastern Oregon there. Now, again, as the storm kind of moves inland overnight tonight, that precipitation moving east with it, and I think by the time we get towards midnight tonight, really drying out through much of Oregon itself, same for Northern California. But look at all this snowfall now moving into the Rockies from Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and into the Four Corners region. Again, seeing a pretty heavy dosing of snow out of this before finally it kind of clears on out of here, and we're just left with some higher elevation snow showers Sunday night into sections of Colorado, and same story kind of through our Monday morning there. So again, I think ice is going to be a big time concern here, from Salem, Oregon down towards Eugene and kind of all points in between, as well as up here along the northwestern coastline. Some folks could see half an inch of ice, and that's once you start getting to that point, that's when things get very big time, if you will. Travel will be basically impossible. We're going to see power outage problems, especially with the wind from that storm system itself moving on in. Again, this is going to be a very big time ice storm, and probably one that gets remembered for a while here, as ice isn't too uncommon here, but it's not something that we see super often as well. So again, just really big impacts there with those ice totals. Snowfall also going to be a big time kind of impact thing here, if you will. And here's that big swath of snow. Again, as that storm moves inland, that snow picking up with it here. And much of, kind of eastern Oregon here, even outside of those really high peaks, going to get a good chunk of snow out of this. A lot of folks kind of hitting that half a foot mark in those pink colors on your map. And once you get into those even higher totals, folks down here in the mountains of Utah are really going to cash in as well. Potentially feet of snow there, kind of in those higher peaks near the Salt Lake City area before all is said and done. Now, moving south a little bit through the southwestern part of the country, again, going to see a lot of snow in these higher peaks as well. Sierra Nevada is picking up a good chunk here. The mountains there into northeastern Nevada, a good chunk of snow as well, potentially feet of snow in those highest peaks. And same story for the mountains of Colorado, a lot of snow. So the ski resorts, I'm sure, are going to be very happy to see this forecast, and any ski lovers out there as well that might have any trips planned, a good helping of snow here for a lot of these higher elevations. Alrighty, so that's the storm out west, that's the storm out into the east, and let's kind of talk about everything in between here. Now, we do have a big-time Arctic air mass in place. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more here, and then we'll talk about that southern snow and ice storm likely on the way, starting really as soon as tomorrow and overnight tonight, and getting into our early next week. So taking a look at the overall setup that we're dealing with, this is that big Arctic air mass. This is overnight tonight and getting into tomorrow. You'll notice these very cold colors showing up on your map, indicating that very cold air through much of the country. And let me actually move my head out of the way so you can see that a little bit easier. And also, you might not have been able to see these maps. Let me check very quickly. Should be okay. So, sorry. Anyway, back to what we were talking about here. Here we go. So again, a very cold air mass in place for much of the country here, for much of the northern tier, and that is slowly but surely going to work south and east. And I was talking about this about a week ago. I mentioned the possibility for some southern snow and ice here, as very often what happens is we get these kind of Arctic air masses, and then what happens is we get these kind of kinks in it, if you will. You're noticing that right here, a little bit of a kink in that, and that allows low pressure to form and kind of ride along that Arctic boundary, and that's kind of what we're going to see here with this storm system. So you'll notice that very cold air continues to hang around, and we get kind of these short waves to ride along it, just meaning that you kind of see a little bit more troughing here. And again, that's going to allow lift in the atmosphere and eventually low pressure to bring some snow and ice and rain areas further east here, going into kind of the first couple days of this week. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you are temperature anomaly maps. Again, this shows you how far above or below normal temperatures are compared to what they should be this time of year. And here is that very cold air. This is overnight tonight into tomorrow, and we've got brutally cold air kind of settling in for much of the central part of the country. I know there's a playoff game in Kansas City. I think wind chills are expected to be below zero for much of that game. Again, all due to this very cold air mass. Now that continues to slowly work south and east here, and eventually going into our Sunday afternoon, look at this very cold air now overtaking much of Texas, northern Louisiana, Tennessee, and Mississippi, even down into Arkansas. This is the same point that low pressure is going to kind of begin to develop a little bit here. And obviously, anytime it tracks along this very cold, air mass, we're going to get some snow and ice to break out. And that is exactly what is expected to happen here, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. But you'll notice another thing I want to mention is that cold air hangs around for a while. This is Monday afternoon, it's still there. Tuesday afternoon, now sliding even further south here. Wednesday afternoon, now getting east of the Appalachia chain. Carolina's getting in on that cold air. Gulf Coast getting in on that cold air. And that hangs around for a while here, even going into later next week. When we could get even another shot of cold air to kind of overtake a lot of the eastern half of the country, and that could lead to another snow and ice potential about a week from now. And I'll touch on that very briefly here at the end of the video. Alrighty, so let's talk about this storm a little. Again, that cold air already really in place, but continuing to slowly kind of ooze in to much of the south central part of the country here. And this is tomorrow morning, Sunday morning. By the time most folks are waking up, we're going to then get some winter precipitation to break out a little bit here. You'll notice we've got just enough lift in the atmosphere that we're getting some light snow and freezing rain showers here through much of eastern Texas, southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana for our Sunday morning. But it's really going into Sunday afternoon that this really takes kind of a bigger form, if you will. And at this point, again, about the time the sun is going down, Sunday evening here, we've got snow breaking out through northern Arkansas, through Memphis, into sections of Tennessee, while we're seeing ice kind of begin to accrete a little bit further south than there from eastern Texas through northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, northern Mississippi. Again, this could be a bit of an icing event compared to snow. Now, overnight, you'll notice that ice continues to build up here, and I'm very concerned about ice totals here for much of kind of northeastern Texas here, northern Louisiana, and southern Arkansas. This is not very heavy ice, which you might think, okay, that's a good thing, but it's actually a problem. Kind of the lighter freezing rain is, the easier it is for it to kind of accrete or just accumulate, if you will, and that's going to lead to some very big-time ice totals, I think, and very tough travel conditions, power outages as well here, likely, again, kind of in this circled area on your map is where I'm most concerned for those ice totals to get quite high. Now this is Sunday night going into Monday. You'll notice if I continue moving this ahead, it's still there. By the time we're waking up Monday morning, we've still got ice and snow falling in different regions. And again, that's going to lead to a multi-day event of kind of wintry impacts, and even after that, because as I showed you earlier, that cold air, it's going to hang around for a while here. It's not going to be kind of a one-and-done southern snow and ice system. In fact, this is kind of reminiscent of what we saw in 2021. If you remember, we had rounds and rounds of ice and snow through much of Texas and Oklahoma. This is going to be very similar to that here for a lot of folks. Now, maybe not to the same magnitude, but the same general idea. Again, kind of just waves of light precipitation working over this Arctic boundary. And again, this is waking up Monday morning. We've got another round of big-time ice in the pink, some sleet in the kind of purple here, and then blue obviously being snow. Now this is as far out as this model goes. If I switch it over to the GFS now, looking at the same time frame, shows the same general idea. Waking up Monday morning, we've got that snow and ice breaking out for many folks here. And it even continues into Monday afternoon before finally it looks like going into Tuesday afternoon, the storm system kind of works on out of here and we have some nicer conditions in store. So to just kind of recap for the south central part of the country, we've got snow and ice on the way from really overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning, throughout Sunday, throughout Monday, and even into the beginning part of Tuesday before finally that dry, cold air kind of once again takes back over. Now, as I mentioned, I am concerned about ice totals. This is only the next 48 hours, and we could see ice going even longer than this, but I think this model does a good job at showing kind of the general impacts here from Dallas-Fort Worth through southern Arkansas into kind of that strip into northern Mississippi. We could see 1/10 of an inch up to 1/4 of an inch of ice, pretty widespread. Isolated spots here, I think kind of, let me draw this in for you, kind of here into southern Arkansas, into really the Texarkana area. I think could see more than a quarter of an inch of ice. Not out of the question at all. And again, that's going to cause big time travel concerns for a big chunk of this part of the country. Now, snowfall totals in this area, again, you're going to have to go a little bit further north. I think Little Rock over towards Memphis is going to be kind of the area that sees a little bit more in the way of snow here. I think about 3 to 5 inches of snow is going to be widespread for a lot of folks here in central Arkansas, into extreme northern Mississippi, and into the Memphis area. But some folks could see even a little bit more than that, and we'll take a look at that here in just a moment. All right, that's the south central part of the country. Let's talk about kind of more of just the southeast as a whole here. And again, impact's going to be big time in this area as well. So let's go ahead and time this out. Again, this is Sunday afternoon. You'll notice here comes the storm kind of getting its act together back out towards the west. Snow into the Ozarks and ice to the south of there, like we just took a look at. Not take a look at. I'm sorry, English is hard sometimes. But here we go. Overnight Sunday into Monday. This is about 8 o'clock Eastern time. And we've got this big band of snow and ice again setting up shop. I think snow for most folks in Tennessee. I don't think this is going to be much of an icing concern, but south of there into northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, as we were talking about, this will be more of a freezing rain event than a snow event, unfortunately, for most of you folks. Now, getting into overnight Sunday into Monday, this is about the midnight time frame. We've got a really nice kind of beautiful band of snow here setting up from Memphis to Nashville, back towards Knoxville, north into southwestern Virginia, southern Kentucky, seeing that snow falling overnight here. And by the time we're waking up Monday, as far out as this model goes, that snow continues to push eastbound. And now we've got snow breaking out into the triad of North Carolina, back through Danville, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, again, kind of up near Blacksburg into southern West Virginia, eastern Kentucky near Pikeville. A lot of these southern cities on this latest model run is showing some snow here through kind of the early morning hours of Monday. So again, most folks, this starts Sunday, continues to work eastbound overnight Sunday, and then here we are waking up Monday morning with snow for a lot of folks as far south as northern North Carolina into northern Alabama and northern Mississippi. So this is going to be a big-time storm. Last winter, we really didn't see much snow or ice at all in this part of the country. This is going to change that here going into Monday morning. Now, again, this is only as far out as this model goes, so we're going to have to switch over to our GFS model and kind of pick up where we left off here into our Monday morning. So again, this kind of agrees pretty well with what we were just looking at. We've got snow breaking out northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, back through much of Tennessee and into sections of western North Carolina, and even back into southern Arkansas. Now, if you're watching in Georgia, South Carolina, and kind of southern Alabama, you might be thinking, all right, well, this is looking good. A big-time snow is on the way for us. Well, I moved this ahead a little bit, and you'll notice that snow, continues to work eastbound up into the mountains and into even Virginia during Monday evening. And overnight Monday, here we go. The storm kind of begins to fizzle out a little bit. Unfortunately, all of the energy that we have is still kind of off the coast here and not quite able to connect with this Arctic boundary. So this is going to be more of a snow and ice event for areas kind of west of the Appalachia chain and the Appalachia chain itself. Now, one encouraging thing we have seen for our snow lovers in North Carolina and maybe eastern Virginia here overnight is kind of this second piece of energy that tries to develop here Tuesday afternoon and into Tuesday evening. Here we go, here it comes, and on the backside we get just enough precipitation to kind of overlap with that cold air that we get some sort of wintry scenario during the kind of early morning hours of Wednesday here. So this is a possibility, it's not out of the question, but that even is not super long lasting, but does bring some snow into North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, and maybe sections of South Carolina during our Wednesday before finally that moves on out of here. Now, kind of the big question mark here, and the reason that the forecast is still a little tough for those folks, is the placement of this low pressure. So this is kind of Tuesday morning here. You'll notice our ensemble's indicating, well, if you could see it, sorry, let me move myself out of the way. Our ensemble's indicating that we have low pressure beginning to deepen here off the Carolina coastline. Now, normally that is a good sign, but unfortunately, we just need it to be a little bit stronger and a little bit further towards the west here to get much in the way of winter precipitation. So if some of these members here that kind of have this hug in the coastline are correct, we very well could see, I think, some kind of snow in Virginia and North Carolina, potentially as far south as Charlotte and Fayetteville. But if some of these other members are going to have it a little bit further offshore, correct, this isn't going to be quite as exciting of an event. And it'll be really just kind of really dry and cold for most folks. Now, one thing I will mention, a lot of times kind of models like to uptrend these in the last minute, so it's very possible going into Monday and Tuesday that the chances of this snow getting further south and east do kind of uptick a little bit. But right now, it's just kind of a marginal event for most folks. And if you're watching in the East Coast up into the Northeast, again, same story. A lot of our models have this low pressure, but it's just a little too far offshore. Now, again, it is possible. This is still 90 hours away from right now. This could scoot off towards the north and west here. We see that a lot of the times as well. I don't want to rule that out, but again, this is going to be more of a Tennessee, kind of Arkansas, Mississippi event than anywhere else. And that shows up great here on our ensembles. Chance of at least an inch of snow accumulating big time here through much of Arkansas, Tennessee, and northern Alabama, and Mississippi as well. Again, seeing those chances of snow. Now, as I move this further ahead into time, you'll notice those chances do kind of uptick a little bit here in the East Coast. This is overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. I-95 corridor of the Northeast getting in on some of these chances. And even back down again into Virginia and North Carolina. Not off the charts by any means. In fact, still very low. But there are still some scenarios we see snow kind of further south here into the mid-Atlantic. Now, moving this further ahead into Wednesday afternoon, again, you'll notice those snow chances continuing to kind of increase through the northeast as that low pressure kind of gets a little bit closer, but then all those snow chances are gone by Thursday afternoon. So how much snow are we talking in this part of the country as a whole from our latest blend of models? Again, I think a big chunk of kind of central Tennessee here and into southern Kentucky, 3 to 5 inches, isolated spots getting half a foot of snow, not out of the question. So, that's definitely going to be a very, heavy dosing of snow, if you will, and probably going to cause problems for a while, because again, that cold air is going to settle in after this, so this isn't going to be something that melts the next day. This is going to be something that kind of hangs around for at least a good 3 to 5 days through much of this part of the country. And those snow totals even also pretty good into southern Kentucky, up into West Virginia, 3 to 5 inches there as well, quite likely. And you'll notice as I move this even a little bit further ahead into time, some of these snow totals try to sneak into areas of North Carolina and Virginia, but as a whole, right now, that's just not the most likely scenario. All right, now that is not the end of the video. There's one more thing we need to talk about. After that southern storm kind of moves on through, there's another storm potential going into next week. Our latest European ensemble members indicate a big-time trough here kind of swings out of the Midwest and into the east, bringing another reinforcing shot of cold air and potentially enough lift in the atmosphere that low pressure could once again form here and try to ride up the coast. Now again, this is not set in stone, and I'll just quickly show you the odds of snowfall here with the same model. You'll notice they definitely uptick here. Going into, this is next Friday, those snow chances getting a little bit higher through Ohio, West Virginia, and into the Northeast, even down into sections of the Mid-Atlantic, and potentially down even into portions of the Carolinas here, going into next Friday and Saturday. So again, not off the charts, but definitely a signal here for another storm going about a week out from now that I did want to mention here. Again, I'm not going to talk more really than this about it, but just know that that signal is there once we get past these next couple of storms. All right, so again, a very active pattern in store, and I kind of expected this video to be closer to 20 minutes, and here we are. It's a 33-minute long video, so I do apologize, but I also appreciate you hanging in there with me. And again, just thank you so much for all the growth over the past couple of weeks, and really over the past month or two. The channel has really exploded, so I do appreciate that from all of you, and it does mean the world to me. With that said, though, I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, and I will see you all tomorrow.